Hello everyone and welcome to our BG Live Bats Are Cool. Now we've completed a sound check already and I would recommend coming out if there are any issues and coming back in. Also let us know of any issues in the chat area. We also have some top tips for anyone that's having a problem with a smartboard. I know what that used to be like and we'll add these to the chat area as well. So it is absolutely lovely to see you all again. If you were here last week, then welcome back. And if you're new today, please know that you're most welcome and we're so glad you joined us. Now, I can't believe it's actually been a week since I learned about bats. I just thought the lesson was so fascinating last week. And I'm Sam, and I'm the main teacher and development officer here at West to West. And I still will be the person that continues to be a little bit silly on screen, but hopefully you'll bear with me. I'm also delighted to say that we're again joined by Arlo for Keep Scotland Beautiful. Arlo, you're leading our session again today. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing all right. How are you?
We're doing very well. I can't wait to find out more. I have to say, I have been looking forward to this since Monday morning. I was telling all my family and friends about bats at the weekend because I was saying they were going out dog walks and they were going out in the countryside. And I said, you need to learn all about bats. They found out things they never knew. And the fact you gave us last week about the number of insects that they could actually, I know you're going to speak about that today. They were fascinated. So thank you so much for telling us more about that. And over to you in a little second. Just before we start, if anyone that's new, how does a lesson work? Well, lessons usually last around 45 minutes. There'll be times we ask you to think, to reflect, and to feedback in the chat. And again, teachers, thank you so much for your patience. We know that you have those fast typing fingers in the chat for us as well. A reminder today, you might be working on a learning mat or a jotter on paper. Nothing is wrong at all. And if there's really good discussion taking place in class, again, don't feel pressurised to come back to Arlo and myself. Just keep those discussions going. Now, favourite part today, what we're learning? Well, we're continuing to learn from last week. But again, don't worry if you weren't here. It's absolutely fine because it's pretty straightforward in terms of understanding what Arlo's going to present. So we're going to look at understanding how bats are important to the environment, and we're going to be able to understand what heritage is. And again, I'll know you've been successful today if you can describe why bats are important, explain what is meant by heritage, might be a new idea to some people, and summarise how bats, how we can help bats in our everyday life, which is quite exciting actually. So, in a nutshell, we're learning about bats, we're going to be learning about roosting, we're going to be helping them, and we're going to be learning about heritage. Wow, I have to say, my brain's going to get a workout again, Arlo. I can't believe I'm going to learn this much, and I know our young people are looking forward to it as well. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to you because I know you've got a fantastic lesson planned for us where we're going to learn more about bats. Just when I thought I couldn't find it anymore, I'm going to share that with everyone around me, and hopefully our young people will do that too. And during the lesson, we will try and give as many shouts out as possible to all the lovely teachers putting the school names in. It's great to see so many people here last week again. Over to you, Arlo.
Hello. I am just going to make sure I'm sharing the right screen.
No problem.
Hopefully you can all see this now. Yes, so welcome, and hopefully you've all been having a lovely week. And as Sam said, I'm Arlo, and we're going to be investigating heritage, what our views are about bats, about roosting, and we're going to learn even more ways we can help bats. First, we're going to look at, what do you remember? So think back. I know it was a week ago, but hopefully you can remember. What do you remember from last week, or what did you learn? Did you learn something really cool since then and want to tell us all about it straight away? So give yourself a minute, have a think, maybe have a quick refresher and a pair if you need it, and then get us back to us in the chat. Your answers coming in. The insects, they're great pollinators and they use echolocation. Fab answers. Some of them like fruit as well.
Great
Biggest bat
memories.
was 1.8 meter wingspan. Fantastic memory there. Correct, yes. They can hang upside down. We're about to learn how long they can hang upside down for. They can come out at night and they see in the dark by using echolocation. They're the only flying mammal, yep. Lots of different types, and the smallest is around the size of a thumb. Again, great memory.
Well
Eat
done.
around 3,000 insects a day. Yeah, there's around 13 parts of the body for a bat that we tend to label directly, and the smallest is a bumblebee bat. Amazing memory, everyone. Wow, another great answer. I'll answer a few more because I'm really impressed with everyone who's remembering all this. All the different types of bats. They have thumbs. They don't like light very much. No, they're not big fans of it. They like fruit. Don't like cats. I think it's more They don't dislike cats, they just don't appreciate being prey. I don't think anything does. And they have wings that have their fingers. So yeah, big fingers, elongated, and then all the membrane, if we can remember our nice one from last year. Last
Mm.
week. And yeah, the smallest 2.5 centimetre wingspan, and what they do each month. Amazing! You've answered that fantastically. And what I'll do is after this lesson I'll put all these answers together just so in the learning mat, and you'll be able to go back and be like, oh, how much did I remember?
Yeah.
So the next part we're gonna answer the questions that you gave us last week. So here's a few questions. You don't need to read them, I'm just gonna read through them with you. Question 1, is a school playground a bad environment for a bat box? No, you can put a bat box in your school. Just make sure that you've got safe wood, meaning it's not got toxic sprays on it. And that's because bats can be really sensitive. Make sure you put it in a safe place, kind of out of the way where it's not going to be bashed, and kind of somewhere safe where it's not going to be directly in the wind. Where does the fungus come from, and what is the fungus? So the fungus is referring to one of the threats bats face around the world, which is called white nose fungus. Thankfully, it's only really found in Americas and in Asia. And it's a fungus that affects the face, so like the name, it's white fungus that grows on the nose, and then
Oh.
unfortunately the bats suffocate. And the third question is, can two bats hibernate next to each other? Yes. Of course they can, because they like to live in colonies. So they maybe will change their colony now and then, and who they sleep with in the roost. But yeah, they like to sleep together, kind of like penguins and other animals. They'll huddle together, stay a bit warmer, and just all round it's a bit safer for them, being small animals, in safety in numbers. How long are bats pregnant is question number 4. This is a really good question, because even though they mate in October here, they delay their pregnancy, and when the weather is warmer come spring, they gestate for 6 to 9 weeks. But they can again delay pregnancy during the pregnancy if the weather's not good and they don't want to give birth yet. So how much do they lose during hibernation? They can lose around a third of their body weight, which is quite a lot considering they're so small. How do we know they eat 3,000 insects, and how is this recorded? Great question. It is always an estimate, because we can't go and interview bats and ask, hey, how many insects did you eat last night? No. We have to do something a little bit messier. What you have to do is you collect bat poop called guano, and you have to be really, really careful when you do this, and children shouldn't do it because it's very toxic. But they then dissect the poop and count what they can see within it, and that can give them an estimate of what bats are eating each night. And if they make sure it's a fresh sample, they know this will be from last night. So it's quite complicated and more difficult than, say, watching a big animal eat, because we can't always see what's going on and we can't count each insect a bat eats. So it's a really good question, but very tricky. How
Wow.
long can they hang upside down for?
Mm.
They can hang upside down pretty comfortably for about 5 to 6 months. They might move around a little bit, but they won't really do much. They'll just hang there, and it's very little effort. It's like us lying down, although unlike us, they don't get bed sores. If you lay down for 5, 6 months, you're gonna get sore. But they can just keep doing it because it's only
Wow.
hanging on their feet.
That's such a long time.
8, do bats lay eggs? They don't lay eggs, they give birth to live young. There's only, I think, 2 mammals that lay eggs. Every other one gives birth to live young, and they feed them milk as well. And what do they do during the day? Bats are nocturnal. They're basically on the opposite schedule to us. So they sleep in the day and they go out when it gets dark. So in the daytime, a good bat should be sleeping and resting. If you find one in the daytime, it's probably unwell, confused, or maybe sick and needs help. The best thing to do if you find a bat in the daytime, just to give the National Bat Helpline a call, which there's information on the previous slide, and it's in the notes, or the SSPCA. So hopefully I've quickly ran through all those questions, but don't worry, the answers will also be to have a look at afterwards if you want.
That was great.
So,
It helped me so much, I have to say. Thank you, Arlo. I've now got those answers, and I've been wondering about how long they could hang it upside down for, so
well,
thank
I'm
you.
glad to help. And if you've got any questions during this lesson, I'll answer them and they'll go back onto the learning mat as well. So don't worry if you're like, oh, I have more questions. Ask away. The next part we're going to look at is what is heritage? So I want you to have a think about what heritage is. Maybe you're not sure, and that's fine. Think about what part of maybe your culture or where you're from or what things connect you to your environment and to people. I'll give you a minute just to have a think, and if you think you know an answer or an example, just put it in the chat. And if you don't know, that's perfectly fine because we're going to learn about it together. Where you come from is part of your heritage. We think it means their history, where they come from. Traditions. Traditions is a really good example. Yeah, something you pass on. Yeah, I really like that one. Something you pass on. It's what's inherited. It can be, yeah. So if someone's got an item and they pass it on to someone, that can be part of their family heritage. Where your parents come from, 100%. Who you're related to. These are fantastic answers. So things like your family tree and what you get. And if we think about back to the items, what else might you find within our culture? Think about myths. How the people live. Yeah, so it's not just about where they live, it's how people live. So cultural practices. A bat family, well, I would say the bats probably do have quite good family relations because they often have friends for a long time. And if we remember, even back to last week, vampire bats even feed their friends because they care so much about them. Unicorns. That's a really good answer. I was really hoping someone might know it. Our national animal, which is part of our heritage in Scotland, is a unicorn. Fantastic answer, everyone. I'm going to run through some examples here that maybe some of you said, some of you haven't. Loch Ness Monster, a great example again. So it could be our clothing. So these are some examples of clothing from around the world. We've got outfits here that people wear for traditional or sometimes everyday wear, and that's just part of their culture. And sometimes it's really fun if you go somewhere to try dressing in traditional clothes and learn about how it's worn, because we don't want to wear it incorrectly. So if they teach us about it, we can experience their culture and learn more. Things like music is a great untangible thing, meaning you can't hold it, but it's still part of our heritage. So music using traditional items such as our bagpipes is an example of heritage. National animals, so things and like tigers and llamas and wolves are all animals that are national ones around the world. Tiger, I believe, is India, llama is for Peru, and wolves, I think, is Romania. Not 100% sure on the last one, I can't remember, but that's okay, I know it's somewhere. And food, so we have our haggis, Spain has paella, there's sushi from Japan, there's things like stir fry from China. All over the world have their own food, and it's all part of their heritage based on what foods were available. Our artwork and our construction, so things like buildings, this is the Mona Lisa, for example, that's a really big part of the world's culture. And things like pots from Egypt, where if you've done your Egypt studies, things like the way they entomb people in their sarcophagus is an amazing part of heritage there. Someone was amazingly said unicorns, but we also have things like dragons in China, and they're mythical creatures that are a big part of the culture, and they're just really interesting ways to tell stories and connect us to things in the past, but also to keep these stories alive for future generations to know. And my personal favourite type of heritage is nature. I love all the green spaces that we have, and I think it's really important that we think this is a natural thing that's part of our world and we want it there for everyone in the future as well as just now. So we've kind of touched on this, why heritage is important, and I'm going to just fire through this so we can get to a really fun activity coming up. And we kind of said pass on to future generations. So this is a family hanging out together, and maybe they're going to pass on stories, maybe they're going to pass on items. We don't know, but it's an important way to build connection and make relationships. I say we connect together, we become closer when we share what our heritage is and what our culture is, and we learn about each other. Someone said earlier, evolution. We understand our evolution from way back from when we were maybe little tiny cell organisms all the way through our evolutionary stages to what we are today. It builds tradition. Someone else said that earlier. So things like Christmas, Eid, Lent, and all sorts of Diwali. There's loads of amazing traditional events, and even just maybe a traditional every Sunday you have a dinner together is a tradition.
Mhm.
And fostering communities, because your community can be your school community, bringing you together by learning about your local heritage, or your community where you live and learning about that, or even further afield. It's an amazing way to connect us all together. Okay, I want to know what your view, your personal view, so this might be a lot of answers flying in, is what is your view on bats? Just have a think what you think and you feel about bats. Do you think they're good? Do you think they're bad? What do you think? They are cool. Correct answer there. No one else answered. That's the correct them. Scary. Love them. They're cool and interesting. Before last week, I was scared. It's
What?
understandable, especially if you've got a big bat. It's quite intimidating.
Mhm.
I think they're smart. They are smart. Fascinating. Bats in media. Batman. I like this: cool, scary, cute, cuddly, and sweet. They can be
Uh-huh.
all those things because everything can be more than one. Adorable, important for pollination. Yeah, just amazing animals there. They'd make cool spies. I like that. Uh, I think they're good at flying. Halloween, vital to our world. Different personality to their appearance. Yeah, they are a bit. They can maybe dark and scary and maybe a bit different. Disgusting but incredible at the same time. These are great answers. And yeah, all of them are correct because they're your views. And hopefully, we can have maybe people who are scared will be having a shift to be like, oh, maybe it's okay to be scared. But I can also think there's all these amazing aspects to go along with them. They're majestic. They like them hanging upside down, vampires, and they're underrated. They are quite underrated. So we've touched on quite a lot of topics there, and they're the best living mammal ever. Yeah, these people know, they know the
They
real
do. Yeah,
things. Bats are the
absolutely.
best. I'm not biased at all. Dracula. Well, with the mention of Dracula, I'm definitely going to just gently move on to the next bit, which is what the kind of reviewed are as a whole around the world, because it's vastly different. Even within the chat, we've seen such a different of opinion. Some are similar, some are they're just scared of them, and that's fine. In the media, there's all these often links to things like Dracula and villains, and maybe just being a bit scary and unpredictable. Personally, cute and fluffy, yeah. And that's okay, they can be portrayed in that way, but it's good to understand that this is just media, and we should think, oh, it may be a bit in this situation, it's like this, but in the real world, bats have all these other things, and they don't really have the capacity to be evil. They're just cute animals that want to live. In countries around the world, they're associated with darkness, fear, supernatural, and in some cultures, it's seeing a bat or having a bat in your house is a sign of death or bad luck and misfortune. However, in China, for example, they are signs of all this good luck and good fortune, and that you've got really good things to come if you encounter a bat. So it's also, as we say, about what you've been told about bats and what your views are. And maybe if your parents don't like bats, maybe you don't like bats. We're going to move on to test our fact and myth knowledge, because we want to see if these cultural assumptions are correct, meaning we've got these some statements and I want you to work out, is this actually true or is this just something I've been told but I've not fact checked it? So, first one, bats are blind. Is that true or false? Fact or myth? Put either one in, I'll know what you mean. Fact or a myth, true or false? Some mixed answers coming in. Some people saying myth, some people saying fact. Yeah, everything says this, like the saying, blind as a bat. It's most mixed here, a bit of heated debate. Oh,
Ooh.
I do like a debate. I think debates are really great ways to talk about an issue, or in this case, just not even an issue, just a fact or a myth. We don't know. Okay, so we've got some good answers that have came in, and the people who said myth are correct. Although bats use echolocation to get around, they're not blind. This saying is blind as a bat, but the full saying is blind as a bat at midday.
Oh.
So bats don't have good daytime eyesight, they don't need it. They have better night vision, but echolocation for them is so much more effective and they just don't need to rely on it. And if they're out in the nighttime anyway, it's because when they're active. They don't need the eyesight. If you could use sonar, you'd have a picture of it that you wouldn't be able to see with your eyes because you could see corners that maybe you can't see around, or there's reflections of buildings and maybe you would miss it because it's really dark over there. So they just don't need it, but they are not blind, they can see.
Oh.
And that's just a cute bat. You can see his little eye.
Oh.
So they have small eyes to show that they need to see, but then big, large ears because they do need their echolocation. The next one is bats commonly get tangled in human hair. So, what do you think? This person's in the park with maybe a sibling or a friend, and they've spotted some bats and he's a bit freaked out. Do you think he's going to get a bat tangled in him? Most people here are saying myth. So most people I think are saying myth. I'm going to wait see if any more answers are going to come in. Maybe it's a tricky topic because you've not been around bats.
Nope. I was always told that they do get tangles in your hair from a young child. So this is something I
Yeah,
want to
some
find
people
out about.
it's a thing people say, but is it true?
Hmm.
I think. Oh, debate's going on here. All right. Well, I think the key word here is bats commonly get tangled in human hair. It's a myth. They can do the same way as if a bird might occasionally pass by you very close. Thanks to echolocation that we've learnt about already, bats are amazing navigators and really good at not crashing into things. However, if we are, for example, maybe running around or cycling, the way that we are moving is difficult for the bat to find. So maybe very occasionally you might do, but to put it in perspective, I've probably spent around 100 hours doing bat surveys and I've never had a bat fly into me at all. So it's very, very unlikely. They're really good at not crashing into things. However, if you remember me saying about if you see a bat down in the daytime, if a bat's on the ground, it's maybe had an accident because things like windows or wind turbines are a bit tricky for them. Bat on the ground needs your help, and you can call these numbers with an adult, of course, to get support for the bat. And remember, don't pick up the bat with your hands. Make sure you have an adult there and either just cover it and put it in a box, but never with your bare hands. Got to be nice and safe. The next one is about our little friends, the vampire bat. There's 3 species. Fact or myth, bats have a taste for human blood. Yeah, poor bats indeed. Big skyscrapers can be an issue if they're flying around.
That's a great photograph, Arlo.
So these ones are vampire bats that have been rescued and they're not well enough to go out and about yet again, so they're recovering. But obviously we can't change their diet.
Yeah.
So we have to give them their blood. But
Oh.
I have a strong feeling this is most likely not someone's actual.
Thank goodness.
Most people are thinking myth. There's a few facts and seems like some good discussion going on. Some people are thinking maybe sometimes, but it's rare. So what type of blood do they drink? We'll find out. Well, I'm glad that we've got some good mixed answers here because that sounds that everyone's thinking about it. It's a myth. They don't have a particular taste for us. We're actually quite tricky prey. We are usually, for one, clothed. Most animals don't walk around in clothes, so there's an extra layer. And we also move around a lot. And vampire bats prefer cattle blood or just some other large mammal that they actually hunt them in a very interesting way. If you remember saying bats usually fly around and echolocate, some vampire bats, they go on the ground and they crawl along and then leap onto the large animal and just make a small cut and then they just lick it up like water. So if you can see in the photo at the top, that little kind of red bit on here, you can see it's actually the tongue, so they're just lapping it up like water.
Mm.
If you're scared of this, that's okay. None in the UK, all native to the American continent. But they prefer nice, easy animals like cows, and they also make sure that the animals don't really feel it. So, why do they prefer it? Amazing point here. St. Joseph's. They have toxin in their saliva that keeps the blood flowing like water. So they have something called an anticoagulant, and when they lick it, it basically keeps the wound a bit open, and they just drink it. But when they go away, the wound will just heal fine. The cows usually survive, but you can, like any animal, and as we're going to find out later, they can carry some diseases and viruses which can make them sick, which is why farmers don't like them too much. But the bats do need to eat, and it's not it's not as big a problem as people make it out to be, because they do have other prey. Feels like they drink human blood. Yes, they would. They drink probably any blood that was given to them because they do need it. I guess it's kind of like this is their preference. Say you really like to eat potatoes, but you're given sweet potatoes instead. It's kind of that kind of saying they maybe have a preference, but they will just eat it as well. So amazing questions. Here's our little cow. The next one, again, it's semi-related. If you remember that they've got saliva that's got anticoagulants, there might be other stuff in their saliva, and other bat species may have different things. All bats carry the rabies viruses. Is that a fact or a myth? Do you think you can get rabies from bats? All of them carry it. It's mixed of opinions, some myth, some fact. Some say myth, no rabies in the UK. Divided over in Miss Taylor's class. Okay, so it's a close divide in some classrooms, some are saying myths. Some good discussion, I hope, going on. And while we're having a think, this bat is being safely caught by a professional, and you can see he's got big, thick gloves on. That's so even professionals. It's not just us saying that everyone needs to wear gloves with bats. And they're sampling the saliva, and this can tell them for sure what species. They can track the genetics. They can see if it's ill and if it's carrying any diseases. And it can also be used to track them where they go if they get caught somewhere else, so we can see where they travel to. So it's a pretty interesting way to follow it, but it's quite tricky, and we like to be very minimal with holding bats. So I think we've all got our answers kind of in now, and there's a big divide again. It's a myth. There is only a small number that carry classical rabies, and we can see here it's around 1% of bats in Europe, I believe, carry the classical rabies virus, and in the UK, we don't have any that carry it. They carry a bat rabies virus that has the similar effects to classical rabies, but it's not the same disease. So very small amount, but if you ever get bit by a bat, make sure you go straight to a doctor. It's very, very important for that, because even if it's not rabies, there's other things you can catch which are not good. Hopefully, you've all been paying attention, and so this one should be nice and easy. Bats are really just flying mice. What do we think? Is this a fact or a myth? Most people saying myth. Mostly myth, some facts, some, again, dividing. Love it. Skeleton's different. That's what Mrs. Finlay Coag's class saying. I love hearing that there's a divide. It's so good because it shows that you're really thinking about the question. So hopefully you're still having a divide. Keep talking away. And I think most people are saying a myth related to the mouse family. Interesting, I will touch on that very briefly. Mice don't use echolocation. No, they don't. In fact, they use tiny little squeaks, but not for anything other than communication. So it's a myth. Bats, as we know, they are mammals, like mice, but they are in a completely different group. So mice are in the rodent family, and if we remember, their bats are in Chiroptera, and so they're split off, and they're not actually related to the mouse family that closely. We don't know where the evolutionary um, tract is, because bats have such small bones that they disappear. Germany has amazing finds of bat species from mud pits, but it's really hard. Our best guess, bats have an ancestor that is a shrew, which is similar to a mouse, but it's in its own family as well. Really good question. Have I ever held a bat? Yes. I've held quite a few different species of bats from around the world, and I feel very, very lucky to have it. My favourite personally was holding a 2-day-old orange tongue nectar bat from Costa Rica, and it was the mum had came in and was injured, and the baby was honestly tiny, and I'd never felt something so small but alive in my life. It was really,
Amazing.
really lovely.
Mm.
So fantastic question. We're gonna go on to bat colonies. And so a group of bats is called a colony, similar as you might say a herd of cattle or a herd of zebra or a pride of lions. And we're going to look at what you think, how many bats are in the world's largest bat colony. So have a think and just give us a number. It'll probably be more than you think, is my hint. Couple ants coming in, 9,000. 10 million, 10,000 as well, 8,000. I think that's a million there. Lots of 1 billion. Okay, that's a big number.
Incredible numbers.
20,000 to a billion.
One to
I like
find
getting
out.
the range of answers. Personally, on a selfish one, 444 is my favourite one because 4 is my lucky number. I
Oh,
can't say that is incorrect though, as much as I would like it to be. So, amazing answers coming in. I don't know if anyone's got the exact number, but people are in the right ballpark, I must say. We can take a few more. Is that 500,000? I'm really bad at my numbers, clearly, with all these zeros coming in. 1.3 million.
wow.
Quite a
lot.
lot.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what I want to see as well.
That's the answer. Quite a lot. So the largest bat colony in the world, if we're ready for the answer, is around an estimated 20 million individuals. However, this is again an estimate of what they've counted, and some people doing surveys say that they think it could be anything from 30 million to 40 million because the cave system goes so deep that they can't get everywhere, whereas bats can fly places that we can't. So huge, huge colony, and we're actually going to watch a video of the biggest colony in the world in a second.
That's incredible.
So this is called Bracken Cave, and this is a live stream from Bat Conservation International, and there's a link in the resources, so if you want to go and watch sometime and see the bats flying around, you can. I've kept the sound off for this one, just because it's a lot of people talking in the background, and I'm going to skip over, hopefully, if it lets me, to... It's not letting me, that's annoying. But hopefully you can see, there we go, all the bats streaming out of the cave there. And it maybe looks like almost static, but it's actually all bats, every single one of them.
That's phenomenal. I've never seen anything like this before at all.
So this is at the viewing platform, and this is just something you can tune into anytime and watch. And they also have ones for birds of prey and loads of other species of wildlife. So if you're like, oh, I've seen the bats now, let's see something else. I love it.
Okay.
I sometimes am just like, oh, you know what will cheer me up? Seeing some bats.
Quite relaxing, isn't it?
It is. So this will get this again. I can't even fathom how many there is there. So it's an estimated 20 million in this cave system, and it's in the United States. I always dream of going. So
Oh, amazing.
feel free to have a look at that in your own time. I'm gonna go on to the next part, and that's looking at our natural heritage. And our natural heritage is things like maybe trees, woodlands, waterways. We have lots of lochs in Scotland, and just green space in general can be considered it. Even your garden, if you feel like it's a really important part to you, it could be part of your family's heritage. So really, we're going to explore how it's beneficial to bats as well as the general environment. So this is, if you remember from last week, these are some of our most common Scottish bat species. And we're just going to learn about basically where they're going to be roosting and why they might need heritage to survive. So building heritage, bats need buildings to be protected so they can, because they like to come back to the same places again and again. But if they come back one day and you've just demolished a house, they'll be like, where do I go? So we need to make sure that if something's known for bats, we have to keep it there, because the bats don't know why we're doing it. They just know that they haven't got a safe place to live anymore. And as we've already covered, we need them for a healthy and sustainable environment. So they also help us, even though they also just live their lives, and that just automatically does it for us with all their good eating of the insects like midges who want to eat our blood. So the buildings need protected, not just for future generations of humans to live in, but also future generations of bats. There's a lovely place called Haddle House, part of the National Trust for Scotland, and here it is here. And every year they get hundreds of little pipistrelle bats coming to roost here, and they often are coming because it's what we call a maternity roost, if you remember from the year in the life of the bat, meaning this is where the mums come and have their babies. So you can see a tiny little wrinkly baby there. That one will maybe be less than a week old, maybe 5 days. It's quite hard to tell without knowing the weights, but they're so small, and what they have to do to make sure the bats are safe, they have to close it all off. However, if you ever want to go, you can go and you'll see them all flying out from Haddo House. So having this really important building heritage is really important to keeping our bats nice and safe and giving them a safe place to have babies, to live, to feed, and they deserve to be there just like us. So we're thinking about our buildings, and some people what is Haddo House? It is a a National Trust Heritage Museum, and it's also a green space. I will include a link to it in the resources, so if you'd like to have a read about it and visit, you can do. We're going to move on to thinking about how our buildings are going to be providing houses for bats. So have a look at this lovely house from Bat Conservation Ireland, and we've got some little circles, and it indicates points where bats might roost. You could identify any of them, or all of them if you can. There's quite a lot. Put it in the chat and we can talk about it. Thank you. It's in Aberdeenshire. It's just an example of one place. If you are not in Aberdeenshire and you want to find a place where you could maybe see bats and you really don't know, you can contact the Keep Scotland Beautiful email address and I will reply with a link of places that you can go. But even usually your local park, you'll be able to find them. Surprised they might just above the door. Yeah, you might think that's a really busy spot.
Yeah, I thought it'd be too busy. You'd be interrupted all day long with people coming in and out.
Yeah, and there's also, I should say, there's also bat groups all over Scotland that you can join. If I have a chance, I will update that to the learning mat if people are interested in knowing about their local bat groups. How can they grip onto the wall? So yeah, the wall there is one of them, and basically they've got very sharp claws and they can just hang off of it. So if we're looking at thinking of buildings having the bricks and then the mortar, it's not a smooth flat surface. There's usually small gaps and there's usually bits they can just kind of hang on to.
Right.
So they do that, and they tend to just sometimes even go in between the bits of mortar that have gone away and they can just hang inside the bricks. Can you find them in gutters? Yes, we can find them in gutters. They like it there. They also like it, someone said, in the attics. Attics is a really common place. So all of these, I'll go again. These are all possible roosting sites. Can you name the site? Where do you think the best ones are going to be? And can you name these places within your house? And what do you think? Is it going to be the best place to go? So some space above the door. The reason some like it above a door is if we think a house isn't always occupied, for one, we could have a house that's older and it's just like a barn building, for example, maybe. Or in the city, we have had schools last week, I think, saying that they had bats roosting in their school grounds as well. Lofts rarely use bats, less likely to be disturbed. Yeah, if they're up high and out of the way, they're much less likely. And people saying 4, 7, 8 are the best places. So 4, 7, 8 is roof. Bats are in the clock tower of our school. Yes, so there we go. Bats are in the clock tower. I'm going to put up kind of the answers side by side just to give you a bit of an idea of how many places a bat might roost. And take a minute if you want to have a read through it, but I'll quickly run through where you're most likely, at least in Scotland, to find some. I would say personally, I've always found them in attics and under window eaves. So you've got your window frame and then there's a ledge, and then under there, they love it. However, I've had people come and tell me they've got bats roosting in plant pots before. And I was like, what are they doing there? And it was just because it was within an old building up on some shelves. Is it safe to just leave them in your home? Yes, leave the bats be, let them live. They don't really cause much damage. They'll only cause damage if there's lots of bat droppings, but often it's not actually the biggest problem because they don't always, unless they're hibernating there, which is very unlikely, they'll tend to put kind of on the way out, and then also it's just not as big a problem because they're not really that messy.
Okay.
How far do they fly from their roost? They can fly quite a few kilometers, and they'll just kind of navigate their way to their favorite hunting grounds. How fast do they fly? This varies. The fastest bat in the world can fly 99 miles an hour. It's a Mexican free-tailed bat. Our bats, I believe, are around 30 miles an hour. I'll have to double check that. I'll add that to the questions. So thinking about all these roosting possibilities, and if we're thinking this one would maybe be a good spot for small bats, because we're looking at UK ones. Here's our example of some Scottish bats that are roosting. We've got our brown long-eared, and in the winter, where it's hibernating, it'll be underground and in trees, and in summer, it also sometimes will go to a tree, but it'll never be the same location as the summer roost. They always move and they go to a different place. And the Bentons underground as well, and in stone structures and trees. Pipistrelles, they're in their trees and houses, and in the summer they'll go to houses, specifically usually older houses though, and also in trees. Natterers, old buildings, only in the winter. They do not like it at all if they're not in an old building, which is why we need to conserve them for heritage. We're going to focus on our pipistrelles, and we've got a wee activity coming up. So I'm going to reread the pipistrelle one because I want you to remember this one. So our pipistrelles in the winter, they have tree roosts, houses, and underground. But in the summer, it's only going to be in houses and in trees. And that's just because it's easier for them to get to where there's lots of food, and sometimes they don't need to go very far even. So let's find our bat a safe place to roost. It's winter, like it is right now, and you think the bat could be in farmland, a tunnel, or in a nice city holiday maybe. Where do you think A, B, or C is suitable for our little soprano? Most people saying A just now. Tunnel,
Yep, lots of A's.
the bat cave. So there's lots and lots of questions coming in. I will 100% answer them. Please don't think I'm ignoring them. Okay, everyone's saying A, I think. Paying good attention on the last one. Yeah, so our soprano might go into a tunnel. It's unlikely that they would choose the farmland. There's not really anywhere safe for them to go there, very exposed. And in the city, it's very loud, for one, so they might get disturbed by maybe construction or just loud noises or humans in general. So great answering, everyone. I don't know why the image has gotten messed up here. Apologies. Tips for finding bats. Go out on the sunset and sunrise. Warm, dry weather to green spaces. Bats hibernate over winter, and summer is the best time to spot them. Best to keep quiet, walk slowly, and keep lights to a minimum. And we have something called a bat detector. And this is one that you can buy, and when you go out, if you remember from last week, we heard our echolocations of our bats. You can use this to hear it. which is really, really cool. So if you're looking for bats and thinking, I want to know if bats are in my area, some people say it's in their school at night time, or if you know where they're roosting and you keep a reasonable distance, you can wait at the bottom of where they might roost and see them and hear them as they emerge from their roost site, which I personally love. So really, really cool piece of equipment. And if you join your local bat group, they will have some that you'll be able to use and see. And the RSPB do bat walks as well. So just keep your eyes out. We've got another quiz, because I love a quiz. Makes you all have a good think. And I would like you to name an example of Scottish natural heritage. So think about Scotland and think about nature and think about something that connects us. I think people said it earlier. Loch. So kilt, unicorn, bagpipes and Irn-Bru are all examples of heritage. The thistle is an example of natural heritage as well as cultural heritage. Darnley sycamore tree, great answer. So our natural heritage is thinking of wildlife, animal things, and maybe rivers or trees. Cave, mountains, yeah, or red squirrels. I love them. The River Clyde, Highlands. Yeah, you're all getting it now. Fantastic answers coming in. It's a bit of a tricky one to be like, what's a natural heritage and what's heritage? So it's really good to see that, yeah, wildcats, great one. Fantastic answers. Fantastic answers. Black-faced sheep. Yeah, fantastic answers. I'm really enjoying all these natural heritage answers here in the Scottish Islands. This one, we've just kind of covered it, so hopefully we're paying attention. Name a place a bat will roost. Old house, cave, tunnel, attic. In between house tiles, yes. Gutter, trees. Fantastic answers. Everyone's clearly been paying lots of attention. Plant pots, yeah, that's. I personally still don't believe that like I do because I saw them, but I was like, what are you doing in there? Like, so many other places to go. Eaves, old buildings and attics and unused houses, yeah. It's actually our new building method is actually making our homes very tight and very insulated, which is great for heat, but it doesn't actually leave a lot of spaces for people to go in, bats to go into because it's very designed for people. Unused railway tunnels, yeah, we do find them in there as well. Great answers, everyone. And similar, keeping your ideas about our heritage and how things are connected, give one reason bats are connected to Scottish heritage. So why do they connect together? What makes Scottish heritage and bats important together? Yeah, so one's going to say they had a bat in the porch that covered their school building. They've lived here for thousands of years. They've been here. Miss Review, I can repeat the question. So give one reason bats are connected to Scottish heritage. So think about why the bats are connected to our home and why our area and what makes them important to keeping our heritage alive? Bats live in our school. It's the oldest part, so that's building heritage. Yeah, correct. They like our climate, and we have lots of trees and mountains and caves to live in. Perfect. And they eat insects, so that's all connected together. The insects we could say is related to agricultural heritage because we have them for managing pests, as we remember. And yeah, fantastic answers. They've been here so long. Yeah, they've been here before. Well, they've been here as long as us and before us. They've evolved for a very long time to be here. Fantastic. The next one is one that I think, again, will start a bit of a lively discussion. It's a very personal one. What is your favourite bat fact? So have a think, tell us what you've learned and what your favourite thing you've learned is about bats. Only flying mammals your favourite? Their wingspan can reach up to 1.8 metres. Yeah, great facts them. And 3,000 insects a day. It is always just surprising how many they can eat. Everything. Well, that's great feedback. They aren't actually blind. Echolocation, yeah. They drink cattle blood, and the biggest one's around 180 centimetres. That's clearly a very popular fact. Good to know. Overcoming the myths about them. Yeah, sleeping upside down in the daytime, and they echolocate, and some eat fruit. Yeah, and some people are interested to know about Mexican free-tail bat. Well, if you haven't done already, you can do our bat field guide and be a bat specialist and write maybe about the Mexican free-tail bat that flies at 99 miles an hour. It's amazing. The world's largest colony is 20 million. I'm honestly so impressed that everyone remembering all these amazing facts. We're running short on time, so I'm going to have to move on to the next part. People answered these questions amazingly. They have fingers. Yeah, that's it's a good one. So here's another selection of activities you can do, and they are ones which it's completely optional, but they're really fun and hopefully you enjoy them. They're in the learning pad and you'll be able to just click on them and go right ahead. So you could write a poem and explain about, maybe we have got an acrostic poem and it says bats are cool, and you can write a poem to share all the wonders of bats, maybe some new facts that you learn. You could also explore them in your home area. They're sleeping right now, but come spring, you could do a bat walk, maybe with your parents or after school club. And we also have a cookbook that's got all these recipes that are, if we remember, bats are really, really helpful for lots and lots of crops. So it's all these ingredients that we need bats for, and we wouldn't be able to have without them. Lots of people, again, were also asking about bat boxes. There's instructions and guides on how to build them in the Padlet, and we would love to see anything you do. But if you need advice on the bat boxes, I can do my best to help. But I've also included links to Bat Conservation Trust, who have fantastic guides. So I really, really hope that anything you do, you will share with us and West OS and tell us all about it. And hopefully, if you've enjoyed this lesson and the last one, you'll be like, oh, this was great. Thumbs up.
Absolutely. Arlo, can I just say thank you so much for an amazing lesson, for teaching us all so many amazing facts. I'm really taking away all these facts and figures that you've taken us through, from measuring last week to finding out all about how bats live and what they eat, and today finding out all about heritage. Can I let you into a secret, Arlo, and to all our young people? Bats really are cool. And as cheesy as it sounds, bats really are cool. We spoke about that title before the lesson started.
Yeah.
I have to agree with you now. You have convinced me, and hopefully we've convinced all of our young people out there. I will upload everything to the Padlet. Al's links are there. I also upload the recording in case you want to come back to this, and we'll also get all those questions answered for you as well. Thank you so much. We're going to stop recording now and hang up, and hopefully I will see you again for another lesson with Keep Scotland Beautiful and West to West. Thank you, Arlo. You've been amazing.
Before quickly everyone jumps away, Miss Taylor, Blue Sky, I will double check, but if you no longer use X, we are on Instagram and Facebook. And if you also want to share your work, you could just email it in, and we would love to be able to share it with other people on our socials, and we can tag you via that as well.